All right, so on today's episode, we discussed building a 100-year home.
That's right. We talked about what goes into the design and planning, and then also effort that it takes and the skill on the construction side.
So it's a really interesting topic because not everyone even thinks about how long their homes are going to last. And so diving into a little bit of that and why we should do it is important to think about. So recently, internally, we've been talking a lot about durability, resiliency, and what that can mean as far as the lifespan of a house. So it kind of got us asking the question, like, what does it mean to build a home that still feels good after 100 years?
Yeah.
What does that look like? But it also begs the question, why? Why would you even attempt to do that? What's the purpose behind it? So I think let's dive into that a little bit and talk about what each one of us thinks about why you would want to build a 100-year house or more.
Yeah.
I think in my mind, in this country, we have a tendency to think in short spans. We think in the next year, next 5 years, because there's so much uncertainty and unpredictability that long-term commitment and thinking long-term as far as the things we buy and invest our lives in is a challenge for us. And that's just the culture that we have. I think in older cultures, like in Europe, they don't think of it quite the same way. And perhaps that's maybe why some of the older homes that they have there have lasted as long as they have, because when they were built, they thought about it in different terms. And so to me, as a home builder, I want to build things that my grandkids or their kids could look at and say, hey, great grandpa built that, and look, it's still standing and looks good. That's something to really be proud of.
Yeah. I think for me, I think it could apply to anything, but the thing that I always think is like anything worth doing is worth doing well. And I don't want someone to come along and look at something that I designed or helped build and think like it wasn't done well. Like, why not try better to do better?
Yeah. So my standpoint, I mean, again, I sort of agree with all of those things, but I also think about, I mean, we see how much material goes into building a house. We've all demolished homes and put all those materials in the landfill. And so I think of like what a tremendous amount of waste it is to cycle through buildings every couple of decades. A motto of reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, if you can start with reduce, build fewer homes that last longer, that's really impactful. But also to like, I want to build something that people want to live in for a long time and can.
Right.
I think that's like super closely tied to like what my mindset is, because I think the thought of putting a lot of effort into something and it being a throwaway thing, it's like, and then, so there's that side of it. And then also just like all of the homes that I really enjoy, like I love old houses, and I think it's really fun to remodel old houses because having something to kind of like riff off of in design, I think spurs on more creativity and like immediately starting with the character of an old home, like there's just so much built in there that like it's enjoyable. Like people, there may be different styles that different people are drawn to, but almost everyone likes some old style of home.
Yeah.
But, we speak a lot in our industry about energy efficiency and sustainability and those interesting things that go into building a well-built house. But the root of all of that is a quote from Joe Seabrick that we've talked about recently, that the best thing we can do for the planet is to build houses that last a long time.
Yeah.
And so even if it's not a selfish goal, it's something that we should do just because it reduces the amount of waste of houses that have to be demolished and rebuilt every 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Could you guys think of old homes or homes that you've built that you've said that this one's going to last for a long time?
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite, yeah. Well, I was telling Chelsea a story, and I'll try to make this quick. In the early 80s, when I first started, I had a pseudo partner who wanted to build some duplexes, and he wanted them for rental property. So we built them I'll use the phrase quick and dirty, not knowing any better. In like 45 days, we built duplexes that were 1,100 square feet on each side with single car garages. If those are not dust today, it's because they've been rebuilt. Right? Yeah. And no consideration was taken for any of those things that we talk about all the time. However, just because of the fact that building codes have increased and requirements are stricter now for energy efficiency and durability, if that same thing was built today to the minimum standard it was built at that time, it would certainly be a higher performing, longer lasting product.
Sure.
So over time, we have gotten better, and I think houses will last longer and perform better. But I think we've still got a ways to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can think that there was a house that we remodeled 4, 5, 6 years ago downtown that was built in the 1880s. And the bones of that house and the structure of that house were rock solid.
Really?
120, 130 years
That's
later.
impressive.
Right?
Stone walls?
Solid, thick, 2-foot thick stone walls.
Wow.
And old longleaf pine
Yeah.
and oak. All the studs in it were old growth pine. And even though they had been wet and exposed to humidity, they were fine. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the house breathed really well. Now, as we tried to improve the performance of that house by making it more energy efficient, we had to also make sure we adjusted for, the increase in humidity and the increase in the results of people living there more intently and more densely. So anyway, that house will still be here in another 120 years.
Sure.
But I think that's a great example.
Yeah. That's cool.
How do you build a 100-year home? Like what goes into it? And I think we all sort of agree, and we've talked about many times, beyond the construction, the 2-foot thick stone walls or whatever, there is the sort of beauty of the home or the appeal of the building that is one component in which people don't want to tear it down because it's pretty.
Yeah.
So like you could have a house that performs really, really well, but if it's hideous and it's not nice to live in because there isn't natural light and things like that, it's not going to last 100 years. At some point, someone's going to tear it down and start over.
For sure.
All starts with the design.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about that? What are those components that sort of speak to a long-lasting home from a design perspective?
I think with both, like if we think about these in like the two categories of sort of like the design side of things and then also how it's constructed, that like an important component that both have to have is patience. And I think like as far as design is concerned, a lot of the features that I think get valued by people, like when it comes to design, there's maybe more categories, but I feel like there's like kind of two categories within design that it boils down to. One is like sort of how refined the design is. And like I see a lot of things, the like kind of cheaper, quick spec homes that like maybe project that you described, there's not a lot of thought that goes into it. It's kind of just like slap it together. And I think the same is true on the design of those. There's not much design thought. Right. Someone's not like agonizing over resolving some weird corner. It's just kind of like whatever. A refinement in like just the proportion and geometry. And because you think about like the classic architecture that exists that we have.
Right.
It follows certain rules and feels a certain way. And then also sort of like the detailing and craftsmanship. So like a lot of historic homes, either we love the proportions of and they're really like kind of iconic, or we like can really appreciate like the artistic details and craftsmanship of them. Right. So like, I don't know, those two things to me feel like really worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in planning too, we'll talk about the construction of it in a minute, but things like simple but not so simple things like the location of the house, the orientation of the house, any environmental factors. Like if you're building a house on a coastline right on the edge, that's a challenge that you may not make it through 100 years, right? So I think when placing a home on a lot is to consider those things for the long term, not just the immediate.
Yeah.
Well.
I will say that any home that's expected to last and be respected for 100 years, the architecture has to take into account the specific site that it's located on. And I venture to guess that in this country, it's very common for a catalog set of plans to be built on a random lot without a lot of consideration for that.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's a challenge for the house itself because it wasn't necessarily designed for that specific lot. Is it oriented correctly? Is it positioned right on the slope? Is it nestled into the trees that, if they exist, are there? A lot of considerations for the site. So design has to speak to where it is as well as what it is.
Yeah, one thing that reminds me of, my house is very small. It's like just under 1,300 square feet. And it was built in the 60s by a like locally famous architect. And the like things I've done to it to remodel it, I've like hoped that if someone was to come after me, they would think that they were like sort of like good classic decisions that like fall in line with the original architecture. And one thing that that stood out to me when we went and looked at it was the site, like at the front of it is like the house is essentially at ground level, which if we start talking about construction, that's probably not the best decision there. And then there's a significant slope down toward the back of the lot. And when you walk in the front door, there's not much of an entry, but it feels kind of like there is because you go through this like courtyard type area. And then when you open the front door, right across from you, directly in line with the front door, is a window that faces out the back. And the neighbors on the backside are low enough that you just see sort of like treetops.
Yeah.
And like, it's a small house. It's not anything like impressive by certain standards, but like the thought that went into, there's a view here, we're going to capture it. And like the light inside is really nice because of where the windows are. Like they were mindfully chosen.
Yeah.
It's something that adds a lot of value that like, if it was just like a random catalog house placed on the site, they might not have captured that view.
Yeah. And we see, I mean, in our business, when we are renovating homes, part of what we do working with architects is solve some of those problems that the original builder or designer created, among other things. But so you sort of start to appreciate a lot more when you're replacing those elements or refining those elements after the fact. I think, too, we should mention that 100-year house it doesn't mean it's like a set it and forget it. You build it and then it goes 100 years, right? Like there's maintenance involved, hopefully not much, but and there's going to be some retooling of it. And we should be, as we're building the home, mindful of that. For example, our windows might not last 100 years, so we're going to have to replace them at some point. So the assembly of the installation of those windows, do it in such a way that you don't have to demo the wall to take them out and replace them later. Right. Are there other things that we consider when we do that?
I think just as a blanket rule, never design a house that has serviceable components that you have to do demolition to get them out. Right. So if you bury air conditioning equipment in a ceiling or a fur down cavity, that house is going to get damaged at some point servicing that equipment. Same thing with windows. If you design masonry that goes all the way up tight against a window, you're going to have to damage the masonry or damage the interior trim to get it out.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that need to be considered. If there's a component that within a 30-year period will need to be serviced, think about how it gets serviced.
Absolutely.
In the design and in the construction.
Yeah. So then that sort of begs the question, those other things that you're not going to service, you have to then take certain considerations there, right? So like if you're waterproofing a basement wall or a foundation wall, you only want to do that one time when you build it. And so you want to do that right so you don't have to demolish it, dig up the foundation, do any of those things. So we sort of put our emphasis on the structure of the building, the envelope of the building, the things that you don't want to have to service later, and put a lot of thought and care into what those components are.
Right. Our good partner, Matt Reisinger, preaches that the biggest enemy of any beautiful home is water. And if we manage water well, chances are the house will last pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one that's like, there's two aspects. Like one is like keeping things from getting damaged, and the other is like making certain things serviceable. When it comes to keeping things from getting damaged, by water, for instance, one thing that I think is like a really like a gimme is like good overhangs. especially, and in our climate it helps too with like solar heat gain. What are are there other things that are important for like durability from that standpoint?
From a design standpoint?
Yeah, just like if you were designing helping influence the design of a home that is going to last, like, and we could pick like our top 3 or 4 things other than good overhangs, what would they be?
Well, I mean, a fundamental thing that I always preach is trying to elevate the house a little bit more than usual above grade when it's built. Code requires, I think, 4 to 6 inches above finished grade to the level of finished floor. And that's probably fine when the house is new. But we all know that over time, just the nature of decay from leaves falling and people remulching or resodding or adding more topsoil, that diminishes down over time to very little 1 or 2 inch space.
That's right.
Termites can easily get in over that gap, and a large rain can bring floodwaters in through the walls. So just raising a house up slightly is a fundamental thing that makes a big difference.
That's a really great point. I never thought about the way that the soil does come up over time, because it absolutely, you see that on sidewalks when originally the grass was at sidewalk level, and so many years later it's 4 or 6 inches above the sidewalk. Yeah. Right.
I think a lot of it's just practical application.
It is. Going back to what you were saying about water is the number one enemy. Really, that to me is the fundamental thing, is like thinking those details through, like flashing and where your windows are and how your doors, meet the outside. It's really solving for water.
Right.
That's
a great way to put it. Solving for water.
Yeah. It's a kind of a good segue. Like we talked about some of the design decisions, but what about the like resources or effort that go into envelope and structure? Like what's worth spending more on to have a long-term vision for the home, and maybe like skimping on interior, maybe finish out or something? Like what are the things that you would put in that category?
It is. I mean, it's making sure that you are sealing your envelope tightly, because that protects you from water automatically. It makes the house more comfortable and energy efficient because you're not allowing outside air to pass through, and so you have a more healthy indoor air quality, assuming that you ventilate mechanically. Keeps the bugs out, right? And bugs come in and they will chew up your house and also not make it a nice place to live.
Right.
So I think really just making sure, and I would say do it in as simple a way as possible, because there are a lot of different products out there for us to choose from in order to, seal up the envelope of our house. But if you, I think, apply too many of those components into one project, you have increased your chance of failure.
That's right.
Whereas if you can simplify the geometry of the house, but beyond that, if you can just simplify the installation, I think you were mentioning it, great design is wonderful, but if you don't have great implementation of that design, if you are not taking care on your installation, it doesn't matter, right? It's how it gets put together. If it's done according to plan, that's fantastic. But like you said, the people with their hands on the house putting it together, they've got to understand that as well.
I think that architects I admire because of their quote unquote craft. Especially the ones that
So I mean it's not a craft.
The ones that we work with, it's not a commodity to them. It's a craft that they take pride in, making sure that all the things we talked about are there. But I want to give deference to the fact that the people that are actually executing, the builders, if they treat it as a craft and not as a commodity, then it will end up being a better product. As you say, all of those great waterproofing products, those air sealing products, the best claddings, the best roofing, all of those things are great. But if they're not installed carefully and thoughtfully, they will fail.
Yeah, I think too, you'd spoken about classic design, although we do have all the technological advances that have allowed us to push the boundaries. If we sort of try to think of the installation and the sort of assembly of these things in those classic ways, if we refer back to just the simple engineering behind how houses used to be put together, and try to do it in that way without overcomplicating things. I think you'll find more success in that.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, we don't always do. Sometimes we definitely overcomplicate things. I'm definitely guilty of that.
What about just like this kind of speaks to both the design and sort of the construction aspect, but like material selections, like either based on like for design reasons or for, just like the durability or, aging of the material. Like what are some good tips that we could give there?
If you can find finished materials that are beautiful and durable and cost effective, that's the sweet spot. It's hard to find all three. I mean, everybody wants beautiful and durable, right?
Yeah.
But
and everyone would like it not to cost too much.
That's right. Yeah. So I think.
But what are some, like, maybe just specific to our climate and our location? Like, is there anything that you feel like does well here that you?
Well, I definitely would lean towards local natural materials.
Yeah,
like we use a lot of limestone, and stone just generally very durable.
It's also like a classic choice that's going to keep coming back around and not just be this trendy.
That's right. I think that's a really good point. Great point.
Great point.
Moving on.
But about not sort of giving in to trends, because that sort of goes back to 30 years from now, somebody's not going to think that that's awesome and want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so staying away from trends to the extent that's possible, or at least in those areas that you don't want to change later, like your cladding or the main structural parts of your house. If it's a tile or something like that,
it's easier to change
out, and you probably will at some point.
It's hard because I feel like I tend to be like, there's certain things that I want to play it safer with when it comes to different selections. And to me, the things that are harder to change out, I would rather choose something that's classic, that's going to just keep coming back around and it's not a trend. Or if you want to like venture out of the safe selections, something that you just love and it doesn't have anything to do with what's trendy. It's just like, if you like a certain type of stone a lot or whatever, go for it. Because to me, it seems like when you look back at projects that we value and think are just like worth saving, it's stuff that's classic or it's stuff that's like a little out there, but it works and like certain people will gravitate to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something I think that is maybe counterintuitive to everything that we've just talked about, but I believe can play a role in a 100-year house is using something that, so for example, in my house, I have an IKEA kitchen and very inexpensive, easy to install. And the way that it goes in is not super integrated into the home itself. So very easy to switch out. So kitchens, I mean, those get remodeled all the time. They're not going to, it's very unlikely they're going to last 100 years. Partly because of trend, partly because they get used so much that they get worn down. It's a very intimate space for people that are cooking, and everyone has sort of different ideas. So over the course of 100 years, whoever's living in that home over time. So being able to switch something out, like we talked about with the windows.
So your like number one priority for a decision is actually just how easy it is to demo.
Swap it out,
Some places in Europe, they actually take the kitchens with them when they move.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I don't think people in Europe move. I think that's part of it.
Oh, they do. They do. They just have modular cabinets that slide in. They don't bolt to the wall or connect to the wall.
Very interesting.
One thing I want to say is, how do we get there, right? Because everything we've talked about costs money. And I want to speak to that for a second and just say that I think it's a matter of efficiency. We have valued large, giant spaces for so long in this country that's what everybody thinks they need. And Chelsea and I were talking earlier before you got here that I heard Alan Barley say something that I thought was interesting. When he has a client come and they describe that they want this large, giant home with all these big spaces. He says, well, I can build you a big home that lives big, or I can build you a smaller, efficient home that lives large. And I think if we come to the understanding that we can design and build more efficient homes, we can put more money into the durability and the character of those homes.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
quality over quantity
right.
wins out every time for me.
I say we wrap it up there. I think maybe we'll come back to this and talk a bit more at some point. But it's an interesting topic, I think, to think about, especially because we've, like the way we talked about culturally, it's, I feel like there's maybe a shift happening.
I do too.
Yeah.
And people are appreciating that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
And just think here, you were here to see it.
Great point.
Great point.
Great point.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Moving on.
That's it for another episode of Work in Process. Thanks for listening. If you've got a question, a topic suggestion, or want to start a project with us, send an email to hello@risingerbuild.com.
You can also find us on Instagram at risingerbuild_ATX or on YouTube by searching Risinger Build. We'd love to hear from you.